Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Matchmaking with Macmillan Library. I'm Annie Bostrom, Associate Editor of Adult Books at Booklist. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. The audience is in listen-only mode today, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. Links to today's slides and a title list were included in the reminder email you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. To download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the link located there. You can also download the slides at any time by copying the URL on this screen into your web browser. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from the Macmillan Library team, including Talia Scherer, Senior Director of Library Marketing, Amanda Roundtree, Assistant Digital Media Manager, Emily Day, Library Marketing Coordinator and YA Specialist, and Samantha Slavin, Library Marketing Assistant. Before I turn things over to the fabulous Macmillan team, please let me briefly introduce everyone. Senior Director of Library Marketing Talia Scherer coordinates the library marketing activities of Macmillan's adult publishers, which include St. Martin's Press, Henry Holt, Tor Forge, Minotaur, Picador, Farrar, Straus and Giroux, Flatiron Books, and Celadon. Talia was chair of the Association of American Publishers, AAP, Trade Libraries Committee for 4 years, and was proud to be named a 2010 Library Journal Mover and Shaker. Amanda Roundtree is the Assistant Digital Media Manager for Library Marketing. After saying farewell to her home state of Georgia and attending NYU's Summer Publishing Institute, Amanda spent 4 years under the tutelage of the amazing Virginia Stanley at HarperCollins before joining Macmillan and eventually making her way back to her forever home in library marketing. A longtime lover of libraries, Amanda is excited to share her passion for all things fantasy, sci-fi, romance, and horror, but she'll read anything that comes with a good recommendation. Emily Day is the Library Marketing Coordinator and YA Specialist at Macmillan. After receiving her Master of Arts degree in Children's Literature from Simmons University, she moved to NYC and now calls Brooklyn home. She reads mostly YA and loves contemporary fiction and fairy tale retellings, but will occasionally spice things up with an adult psychological thriller. Emily was proud to be named a Publishers Weekly Star Watch honoree in 2019. And Samantha Slavin is the Library Marketing Assistant for Macmillan Library Marketing. After spending 4 years eating her way through New Orleans, working in New Orleans tourism and marketing at a literary publicity firm, she found her way back home to NYC. Samantha owes her love of books and literature to years of library visits and a house filled with endless bookshelves. Samantha can always be found with a book, whether it's a memoir, historical fiction, fantasy, or contemporary fiction. Welcome, Talia, Amanda, Emily, and Samantha. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Annie. We are so happy to be here today. Good afternoon, friends. We are Macmillan's Library Marketing Department. I'm Talia, the Senior Director of Library Marketing, and I'm joined today by my brilliant and overachieving Misfit Book Talkers, Amanda Roundtree, Assistant Digital Media Manager, Emily Day, Library Marketing Coordinator and YA Specialist, and Samantha Slavin, Library Marketing Assistant. Next slide, please. Get to know us. Here are all the various ways you can get in touch with us. We love hearing from you, so please reach out with any questions, concerns, virtual hugs. We miss you so much. Next slide, please. Get Macmillan e-galleys. If you'd like to download Macmillan e-galleys on a device, here's how. The instructions can also be found on our website. Next slide, please. Be sure to check out our candid reviews of our YA titles at Days YA on our website. Do you love genre fiction? Are you ready to try something new? Check out Genre for All on the website for exclusive content, giveaways, recommendations, and more, all focused on fantasy, sci-fi, romance, and horror. Next slide, please. Oh boy, I'm so excited. I love this series. Happy Half Hour is our weekly book talking series that airs every Monday at 4 o'clock. During the 30 minutes, we highlight 4 upcoming adult and YA titles, and once a month, we'll be joined by guest authors. S.A. Cosby on April 26th, Greg Hurwitz on May 3rd, Alice Feeney on June 7th. Next slide, please. And oh my goodness, if you have not already registered for the inaugural Macmillan Family Librarian Preview, you are missing out, my friends. It's happening next Wednesday. That's next week. Oh boy. We're teaming up with our Mac Kids friends, with Tor, and of course we'll be there, and Ashley C. Ford. Next slide, please. Okay, so for the next hour, we'll be offering you and each other genre-specific title recommendations. And we'll start with romance and me. So my team, what do you have for me today?
Okay, on the next slide, I know that Talia loves a good rom-com, so here, next slide, I am recommending The Secret Bridesmaid. This is a charming, heartwarming, and hilarious adult debut with a comedy of errors and an off-limits love interest. For all those craving some international travel and an extravagant wedding, you have come to the right place. Sophie Breeze is such a brilliant bridesmaid that she made it her full-time job, hired by London brides to stand by their side and work the behind the scenes of all the perfect upscale weddings. And when Lady Victoria's absolute diva of a daughter hires Sophie to be her bridesmaid, she is determined to make Sophie's life a living nightmare, especially when Sophie finds herself drawn to the bride's completely off-limits brother. Fans of Jasmine Guillory and Josie Silver will fall head over heels for this joyful and complicated celebration of weddings, female friendship, and the power of love.
Next, we have One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. Casey McQuiston filled the world with love and laughs and just so much joy in Red, White, and Royal Blue, and be prepared to have your heart grow even more with One Last Stop. A Publisher's Weekly review says it best. McQuiston's joyful sophomore romp mixes all the elements that made Red, White, and Royal Blue so outstanding. Quirky characters, coming-of-age confusion, laugh-out-loud narration, and hilarious pop culture references such as Bella Swan, eat your horny little Mormon heart out, into something totally its own.
And then for my recommendation to Talia, I am honestly recommending this to anyone who enjoys witty, chemistry-filled, escapist romantic comedies like The Kiss Quotient. J.C. Lee is the author of The Delicious A Sweet Mess, and The Dating Dare takes us through a romance that begins with a game of Truth or Dare with Tara Park. Tara doesn't do relationships ever, but that all changes when a friendly game of Truth or Dare with her best friend's new brother-in-law sets her off on an uncomplicated 4-date arrangement. This is an own voices novel with authentic, diverse representation, with characters learning to follow their hearts and take a chance on a happily ever after.
Team Library Marketing, I hope you know CPR because these recommendations took my breath away. And for the rest of you, I've got a few more recommendations in the romance category, starting with Never Fall for Your Fiance by Virginia Heath. A handsome Earl needs to hire a fake fiance to keep his matchmaking mother at bay, and hilarity ensues. This book is bringing down the Duke because there's a clever heroine and a handsome Earl who can't resist her charms. This book is also The Kiss Quotient because a business arrangement turns to love. Bow, chicka, bow, bow. It's also Roomies because there's a fake engagement in close quarters. What could go wrong? Next slide, please. Not Your Average Hot Guy by Gwenda Bond. This is Dorinda Jones's first grave on the right because it's a vibrant and unique paranormal romance. It's also Lucifer because there's a sexy and witty demon. It's The Roommate because it's a fresh and sparkling rom-com. Next slide, please. Too Good to Be Real by Melanie Johnson. Would you, dear audience, want to go on a resort that offers the chance to live out your wildest rom-com dreams? Heck yes! This book is the Bromance Book Club because of its emotional and swoony storytelling. This book is well met because what starts as playing a role turns into so much more. It's also waiting for Tom Hanks because it has a hilarious, not quite, meet cute. It's Austen Land because it whisks readers off to the ultimate fantasy resort. Also, corgi, no tail.
Okay, next. You guys know I love sci-fi, fantasy, and horror, so I am so excited to hear what you have to recommend to me today.
Okay, so my first recommendation for Amanda is Library of the Dead by T.L. Huchu. What could be better than The Sixth Sense meets Stranger Things? Because that is what we get in this first book in the Edinburgh Nights series, The Library of the Dead. Ropa, the ghost talker, hunts down clues to find a missing child and the person who bewitched them. She'll need to call on Zimbabwean magic as well as her Scottish pragmatism to hunt down clues in Edinburgh. And although underground Edinburgh hides a wealth of dark secrets, she also discovers an occult library, a magical mentor, and some unexpected allies. Filled with supernatural horror, danger, magic, secrets, fear, wonder, and dark discovery, this is an intelligent book for readers of all ages.
And next for Amanda, I am recommending a book that is the perfect combination of fantasy, paranormal, and contemporary fiction, which is perfect for our department genre lover. It's a tale about finding out who you really are with a touch of sisterhood, magic, and a family that gets lost and then found. Starring Persephone May, a loner her whole life, starting when she was abandoned as an infant. Unexplainable things always happen around her. She never gets too attached to anyone and is used to moving around. That is until an old friend invites her to an extremely unordinary island that may be exactly what she's been searching for. For fans of Midnight at the Blackbird Cafe and Paula Braxton, this is a story filled with curses, family feuds, and love that saves all.
I am recommending This Thing Between Us by Gus Moreno to Amanda because she is our genre fiction guru and this is horror. It's also an Own Voices debut about a man whose wife has died and reveals their story after she's gone. All the while, he's dealing with a malfunctioning, creepy smart speaker, which is really a demon trying to work its way into our world. Of course it is.
Those all sound amazing. I do think that anyone who owns a smart speaker knows that they're kind of creepy anyway. So the demon, just the cherry on top. So I have some additional recommendations for everyone else listening in today. First is The Freedom Race by Lucinda Roy. For readers of The Underground Railroad, The Handmaid's Tale, and Kindred, this novel speculates what the aftermath would be if there was a second civil war, as a young woman who was bred and raised in captivity races for her freedom. This is the first book in a trilogy that blends magical realism with an alternate history and a call for justice. Next is Truth of the Divine by Lindsay Ellis. This is the sequel to the best-selling Axiom's End and alternate history First Contact novel where the human race is at the brink. They know that they aren't alone, but they don't know exactly who is there with them. While examining the question of what makes a human, Ellis investigates what makes a monster. Next, this is The Chosen and the Beautiful by Neve Vo, the author of the acclaimed novellas The Empress of Salt and Fortune and When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain. But this is her full-length novel debut, and it's the American immigrant story that The Great Gatsby should have always been. Jordan Baker grows up in the most rarefied circles of 1920s American society, but she's also queer and Asian, a Vietnamese adoptee treated as an exotic attraction by her peers, while the most important doors remain closed to her. But she also has magic, and the new gods are ready to devour the old. Next is Empire of the Vampire by Jay Kristoff. For nearly 3 decades, vampires have waged war against humanity, and one man now represents humanity's last hope. This is the start of an epic fantasy series from the author of the Nevernight Chronicles that has all the incredible world building, dark fantasy elements, and broad cast of characters any fan could want. Fans regularly get tattoos inspired by Jay's work, and with black and white illustrations throughout, this will be no exception. Next, The Death of Jane Lawrence by Caitlin Starling puts a new twist on classic horror tropes. Practical Jane decides she needs a husband, one who will allow her to remain independent and occupied with meaningful work. And she has found the perfect candidate. But when she unexpectedly shows up at his manor house on the night of their wedding, something is clearly wrong with her new husband. This is Ninth House meets Mexican Gothic and will be perfect for fans of Rebecca and The Haunting of Hill House, but with a feminist reimagining. And next slide, please.
So I love a good mystery and solving them incorrectly usually. So I am even more excited to see what you all bring for me.
My first recommendation for Samantha is These Silent Woods by Kimmy Cunningham Grant. This is a suspenseful read with a coming-of-age backdrop about a young girl living in the wilderness. Fans of Where the Crawdads Sing and The 12 Lives of Samuel Hawley will love the unforgettable characters and the fierce father-daughter relationship that make up the center of this novel. It is not your typical thriller. It is a complex story of morality, loyalty, and sacrifice.
I am selfishly recommending Dead by Dawn, Paul Doirin's latest Mike Bowditch novel, to Samantha, because Mr. Bowditch is my favorite badass, does everything on his own terms, game warden. Mike may be just a game warden, but he's got the instincts of a seasoned detective, and mostly he just can't help himself. And I love him for that. Mike is driving home when his Jeep hits a deliberately placed trap and skids into an icy river. We will watch him struggle to survive the night as the people who have targeted him come to finish him off. But why?
And then my recommendation is 16 Horses by Greg Buchanan. Greg Buchanan's debut is a thriller full of twists and turns and violence and paranoia as it investigates a series of crimes in Illmarsh, England, beginning when the local police detective finds the heads of 16 horses on a farm. And honestly, it just kind of snowballs from there. It's disturbing and haunting, yet beautifully written. This debut will be great for fans of Kate Atkinson, Ian Rankin, and even the show Broadchurch, as it explores enduring guilt, trauma, and punishment in a small seaside community the rest of the world has left behind.
Well, those all sound excellent, and I have a couple more mysteries to recommend. First up is The Madness of Crowds by Louise Penny. Chief Inspector Gamache returns to Three Pines in the next adventure from #1 New York Times bestselling author Louise Penny. This 17th book in the Gamache series begins as the new year approaches, and Chief Inspector Gamache is asked to provide security for a visiting professor's lecture at a nearby university. But all does not go as planned. Next slide. The Heron's Cry is the extraordinary follow-up to Library Reads Pick the Long Call, the first in Anne Cleeve's Two Rivers series. This time, Detective Matthew Venn is called to a murder scene at a rural artist's home. Filled with intrigue and murder, Anne Cleeves is once again a mystery master. And next. Ooh, and now thrillers. I think these are for both me and Amanda because we both are huge thriller fans.
I love thrillers.
So we're going to start with Samantha. My first recommendation for Samantha is Fierce Little Thing by Miranda Beverly Whitmore. This is a psychological thriller about 5 friends who are blackmailed into returning to the cult where they were raised to face their shared monstrous secret. It's moody, it's gripping, it's haunting, it's juicy, and it has a little bit of a YA crossover because the friends are teens when they are in the cult. You should definitely check it out.
I am recommending Alice Feeney's latest psychological thriller to Samantha because Feeney excels at twisty plots and complex relationships. And who can resist these taglines? 10 years of marriage, 10 years of secrets, an anniversary they will never forget. Think you know the person you married? Think again. Yikes.
Well, I cannot say no to cults and twist. And here are some more thrillers. The Therapist by B.A. Paris. B.A. Paris, the multi-million copy New York Times bestselling author and Library Reads Hall of Famer, returns to her trademark domestic suspense with The Therapist. If you loved Behind Closed Doors and The Dilemma as much as I did, then you are in for a treat here. Alice and Leo throw a housewarming party to try to get to know their new neighbors after moving to an exclusive gated residence. When a mysterious man appears saying that a murder took place in their new home, Alice becomes obsessed with finding out the truth. Next slide. Hello, Transcriber, by debut author Hannah Morrissey, follows a female police transcriber who dives into a murder investigation under the guise of doing research for the novel she's writing. But pretty soon she is out of her depth. Hannah Morrissey actually worked as a police transcriber, so there's a great level of authenticity here and an unusual perspective on the standard crime novel. I recommend this to anyone who loves Tana French's blend of procedure and prose, or fans of Karen Slaughter's absorbing procedurals teeming with corruption and disturbing revelations. Next slide. The Guilt Trip by Sandy Jones. Fast-paced domestic suspense with relatable relationships about friends and the secrets they've kept. Here we have 6 friends, 3 couples, whose lives are upended at a destination wedding when all the secrets they've been keeping bubble to the surface. In vein of Sandy Jones's best-selling novel and library reads Pick the Other Woman, The Guilt Trip is perfect for readers of You Are Not Alone and His and Hers. Next slide.
Okay, do me next. I need to know what to read.
So first is Dark Roads by Chevy Stevens. This is Chevy Stevens' first novel in 4 years, and we have sold over 1.2 million copies of Stevens' 6 novels in all formats. Her novels have received phenomenal reviews from authors such as Gillian Flynn, William Landay, Karen Slaughter, and Lisa Gardner. And Stephen King has twice tweeted about how much he loves Chevy Stevens' books. So, Dark Roads. For decades, people have been warned about the Cold Creek Highway and the women who disappear on it. When Beth Chevalier arrives in Cold Creek, ignore the sirens outside, my apologies. One second. Okay. No. When Beth Chevalier arrives in Cold Creek to mourn the death of her sister on the highway, she decides to finally find out who murdered her. This is for readers of A Gathering of Secrets and Whisper Network.
I love that there were sirens while you were talking about murder. You
The
did that on
timing is just
purpose.
too good.
I know. I am shamelessly recommending S.A. Cosby's Razorblade Tears to Amanda, not only because he is a beautiful writer, but because we will be interviewing him on April 26th at 4 p.m. during our happy half hour. In Razorblade Tears, a Black father and a white father join forces on a crusade for revenge against the people who murdered their gay sons.
Talia, I think you're psychic because I happen to be reading this right now. And for everyone else, you'll just have to tune into our event with him to see what I think about it. So now I have some thriller recommendations for everyone. The first is The Good Sister by Sally Hepworth. Rose and Fern are as close as twin sisters can possibly be, but secrets they've kept from each other over the years are finally coming out into the open. Think if Eleanor Oliphant met a psychological thriller. This comes out next month and finally launched Sally Hepworth into the Library Reads Hall of Fame. For anyone who's not familiar, that means she has had 3 titles chosen for Library Reads lists. Plus, a starred Publishers Weekly review says it's a warped tale of twisted memories and skewed perceptions that will make fans of psychological thrillers say, wow, I didn't see that coming. And honestly, what more can you ask for in a psychological thriller? Next is Sleepless by Romy Hausman, the exciting, mind-bending second novel from the author of Dear Child, which had 3-star reviews and was an indie next pick. After being released from prison, Nadia wants nothing more than to live a normal life. But then one of her new friends kills her lover and begs for Nadia's help. The 2 women make for a remote house in the woods, the perfect place to bury a body, of course. But their plan quickly falls apart, and Nadia finds herself outplayed, a pawn in a bizarre game in which she is both the perfect victim and the perfect murderer. This twisty thriller will be great for readers of The Escape Room and Sandy Jones. And next, The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. From the #1 New York Times bestselling author of The Silent Patient comes a spellbinding tale of psychological suspense, weaving together Greek mythology, murder, and obsession. In The Maidens, Mariana is certain that the handsome, charismatic Greek tragedy professor Edward Fosca is a murderer, but he is untouchable. Fosca is adored by staff and students, and particularly the members of the female student secret society, the Maidens. But then student after student is found dead, and all are linked to the charming Professor Fosca.
This book just got a PW starred review. Ooh, general fiction, that's me. For fiction that defies categories, hit me with your recommendations.
Okay, first up, I am recommending The Husbands to Talia and fans of Nine Perfect Strangers and The Mother-in-Law. The Husbands is from the New York Times bestselling author of Whisper Network. It is a sharp and timely novel that asks the question, to what lengths will a woman go to get a little more help from her husband? Many women face the paradox of the second shift, where they are delegated to take on so much more than their husbands. And Chandler Baker provides razor-sharp insights with fantastically real characters and this strong bond of female friendships.
I am recommending The Ballerinas by Rachel Kapelke Dale. This is a stunning debut with page-turning suspense all about the world of ballet. It's sharp and feminist. The Ballerinas invites readers to get an inside look into the intensity of the art and illusion of the beauty that must be preserved. Sorry, I always do that. Set in Paris, The Ballerinas evokes romance and elegance, timely and provocative, with themes such as the complexities of friendships, sexual politics, and a Me Too inspired scandal. The author also lives in Paris and is a former ballerina, and so she is extremely connected to the world that she writes about.
And then my recommendation for Talia is LA Weather by Maria Amparo Escandon. It's a funny, fast-paced story of an affluent Mexican-American couple who announced their impending divorce after nearly 40 years of marriage, forcing their 3 grown daughters to take a hard look at their own disjointed relationships. It is the perfect combination of Big Little Lies, Emma Straub's All Adults Here, and The Desperate Housewives. It's the sort of joyful commercial drama from a Latina author that readers have been wanting, and it will be great for book clubs as it asks questions about family, romantic relationships, and one's station in both.
Amanda, Samantha, and Emily, I ought to complain to Spotify for these books not being named this week's hottest singles. Ow! Here are a few more recommendations in the fiction category. Heard It in a Love Song by Tracy Garvis Graves is Daisy Jones and the Six because it deals with the power of music to speak to our souls. It's what you wish for because it's what happens when you take a chance on love. It's The Giver of Stars because it's captivating storytelling with humor and depth. Layla's recently divorced, lonely, and thinking about her glory days as lead singer of a band. Josh is a single dad whose daughter's music teacher is, guess who? Layla. Meet cute or what? Next. 1, 2, 3 by Lori Frankel is about a set of triplet 16-year-old sisters. Sister number 1, nothing special, run-of-the-mill kiddo, me. Sister number 2, town's default librarian, y'all listening in right now. Sister number 3, can't talk but smartest of them all. The sisters live in a town where 17 years ago, a chemical company came and dumped a bunch of chemicals. Oh, and P.S., their mom is like Erin Brockovich. The chemical company's founder's grandson joins the girls' school, and the chemical company wants to reopen their plant. Ruh-roh. Lori Frankel is the author of the Reese's Book Club Hello Sunshine book pick, This Is How It Always Is. Next. We Are the Brennans by Tracy Lang. Sunday Brennan's drunk driving leads her home to her resentful brothers, her ex-fiance, the family's slowly sinking pub, and long and closely held secrets. Next, please. Shoulder Season by Christina Clancy. Small town church-going girl loses her parents and becomes a Playboy bunny at 19. Me again. This is about sisterhood, financial independence, the magic of first love, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Next, please. The Days of Aphrodite by Asali Solomon is a Black feminist queer reboot of Mrs. Dalloway meets Toni Morrison. 2 strong women at midlife who rediscover themselves and perhaps each other. 2 memorable sets of mother-daughter relationships. Reading groups will find rich lines of discussion and questions of sexuality, class, race, political scandal, and how we reinvent ourselves. Next, please. Apples Never Fall by Leon Moriarty. The #1 New York Times bestselling author is back, and this time she wants to know, if your mother was missing, would you tell the police? even if the most obvious suspect was your father? Think on that. Next, please. A Woman of Intelligence by Karen Tanabe. An Ivy League educated mother is approached by the FBI to join their ranks as a KGB informant. You know, for a long time, I thought my father was in the Mossad. Seriously. The author has drawn from the little-known story of Elizabeth Bentley to inspire the two primary female characters in the novel. Bentley was a Columbia student turned communist who spied for the Soviets in the 1940s, later worked as an FBI double agent, and played a role in many of the most important espionage cases of the 20th century. Next, please. The Showgirl by Nicola Harrison. It's 1927 when Olive moves from Minneapolis to New York City, determined to become a star in the Ziegfeld Follies. When she accepts a marriage proposal, Olive must decide if she's willing to reveal a devastating secret and sacrifice the life she loves for the man she loves. Next, please. The Living in the Lost by Ellen Feldman, the author of the adored Paris Never Leaves You. Millie and her brother escaped to the US just before Kristallnacht, leaving their parents and their little sister in Berlin. Now they are both back in their former hometown, hoping to find their family. Living and working in bombed out Berlin, a latter-day Wild West, where the desperate prey on the unsuspecting, spies ply their trade, black markets thrive, and forbidden fraternization is rampant. Millie must come to terms with a past decision made in a moment of crisis.
Okay, so the next section is one that I have to say I was particularly looking forward to, so I am very excited to see what you have.
So my recommendation to Samantha is one that I particularly am very excited about. It is Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. We are thrilled to have Sally Rooney join Macmillan, especially with a story as heartwarming as this one. Beautiful World, Where Are You is about the devoted friendship between two women, their lives, loves, families, and ambitions with parallel romances that are never sentimental or sappy, but are cut with a bittersweet reality. It stars a novelist, Alice, who meets Felix and her best friend, Eileen, who slips back into something with Simon. Conversations with Friends and Normal People were massive bestsellers, and Beautiful World, Where Are You is Sally Rooney at her very best.
Woohoo! Welcome to Macmillan, Sally Rooney. I have My Monticello by Jocelyn Nicole Johnson, and I'm recommending this debut story collection to Samantha because of her championing of Sarah Swinlin Bynum's Likes, a short story collection that deftly combined the real and the fantastical. In My Monticello, Samantha will meet a diverse group of neighbors fleeing violent white supremacists led by a young Black descendant of Thomas Jefferson and Sally Hemings. Samantha will meet a university professor devoting himself to the study of racism, a Nigerian widower who immigrates to a meager existence, a young mixed-race woman who adopts a new tongue and name to escape the rural South, and a single mother who seeks salvation through buying a house ahead of the apocalypse.
And my recommendation for Samantha is Once They Were Wolves by Charlotte McConaughey. I really loved Charlotte McConaughey's US debut Migrations when it came out last year, and it was a #1 Indie Next pick. Her new novel, Once There Were Wolves, follows a scientist reintroducing wolves to the Scottish wild, while at its heart, it is ultimately a story about the bond between sisters and the healing power of nature, making it perfect for fans of Where the Crawdad Sings, Euphoria, and We Are All Completely Beside Ourselves, and a shoo-in for book clubs.
Wow, thank you. My expectations were exceeded here. And I have some more recommendations. First up on the next slide is Oh Beautiful by Jung Yoon from the author of Shelter. Oh Beautiful is perfect for fans of women talking, The Night Tiger, and Want. Jung Yoon uses her Korean American background in this Own Voices novel to tell the story of Eleanor Hansen, a journalist and former model who is embarking on her first big magazine assignment, which brings her to an evocative American town in North Dakota that welcomes a wildly diverse mixture of people. But what it really is her birthplace filled with years of unresolved trauma. This is a powerful and compelling narrative that touches on race, gender, and class and what it means to be a woman in America. Next slide is Crossroads by Jonathan Franzen, the first in a trilogy from a central author in contemporary literature. The trilogy tells the story of a Midwestern family spanning 3 generations from the Vietnam War to present day. The first story takes place around Christmas 1971, just outside Chicago, and it's about Russ, the assistant pastor and ex-director of Crossroads, the church youth group. With a marriage that seems to be going stale and 4 children all dealing with times of stress, this is an intimate and humorous start to the trilogy and is great for readers of Andre Osmond and Marilyn Robinson. Next slide. Dear Miss Metropolitan by Carolyn Farrell. Award-winning short story author Carolyn Farrell's debut is inspired by the 2002-2003 kidnappings in Cleveland, when 3 girls were abducted and held captive for a decade. The novel explores grief and rage and crime and punishment and includes documents, newspapers, excerpts from books, photographs, and interviews to piece together the full story. It's the fragmented story of Fern, Gwynnie, and Jasenia, 3 girls abducted by a monster who calls himself Boss Man and held captive in a decaying house in Queens. Hand this one to readers of the Topeka School and the Vanishing Half. Next
Now
slide.
for some nonfiction. When you want the truth and nothing but the truth, I would like some recommendations, please.
My first recommendation for Talia is The Women You Missed in History Class by Tracy V. Wilson and Holly Fry. This comes from the hosts of the podcast, Stuff You Missed in History Class. It's an inspiring celebration of women, especially the intriguing and peculiar. And Tracy and Holly take readers on a journey around the world and through time as they recount some of the most formative contributions made by women.
And one more recommendation for Talia is Books Promiscuously Read, Reading as a Way of Life by Heather Cass White. The author advocates for a life of constant, disorderly, time-consuming reading. I think Talia would love this book for book lovers. It's all about what our favorite authors and books can teach us about reading. Heather Cass White is the editor of multiple collections of Marianne Moore's poetry, so we know that the writing will just be beautiful. White is an expert of insight about the fundamentals and intricacies of reading. This is an elegantly constructed meditation on reading and on life.
I never believed in love at first sight, but that was before I saw these books. And now for a few more nonfiction selections for the rest of you. Let's start with Her Honor, A Judge's Candid Look at Our Legal System by Ladoris Hazard Cordell. This eye-opening memoir from Judge Ladoris Hazard Cordell, now retired, combines her fascinating personal story with a necessary primer on the complex, increasingly troubled American judicial system. Next, please. Ethel Rosenberg, An American Tragedy by Anne Seba, is the moving biography of Ethel Rosenberg, the wife and mother whose execution for espionage-related crimes defined the Cold War and horrified the world. It incorporates the first full use of Ethel's own diary and letters written from prison to her husband, family, lawyer, and therapist. Seba worked with several news sources close to Ethel and Julius, including both of their sons, Ethel's prison mates, and fellow defendant Morton Sobel. Next slide, please. The Nine, the true story of a band of women who survived the worst of Nazi Germany by Gwen Strauss, in this deeply researched testament to the strength of female friendships. Strauss shares the previously untold World War II story of 9 female resistance fighters who banded together and smuggled arms, sheltered Jewish children and parachuting agents, shepherded refugees along escape routes, and finally managed their own escape from a death march at war's end. The author tracked down the families of all 9 women, as well as doing extensive archival research. The author's great aunt Helene is one of the 9. She was able to interview her before she died. Next. Persist by Elizabeth Warren. In Persist, the charismatic senator and best-selling author Elizabeth Warren mixes vivid personal stories with a passionate plea for political transformation.
Okay, next is my turn. What sort of nonfiction recommendations do you have for me?
So first up is Shelf Life, another book for book lovers. I am recommending this heartwarming story of Egypt's first major independent bookstore to Amanda and all fans of The Bookseller of Kabul and How to Find Love in a Bookshop. This is a behind-the-scenes approach that celebrates bookstores, community, and books. It's centered around a feminist entrepreneur in an intensely patriarchal society, filled with a voice that is warm, funny, and forceful. This is a book for the hopeful and lovers of reading.
And my recommendation to Amanda is Somebody's Daughter by Ashley C. Ford. This is the story of Ashley's childhood, defined by the ever-looming absence of her incarcerated father and the path we must take to both honor and overcome our origins. Somebody's Daughter steps into the world of growing up a poor Black girl, exploring how isolating and complex such a childhood can be. As Ashley battles her body and her environment, she provides a poignant coming-of-age recollection that speaks to finding the threads between who you are and who you were born into, and the complicated familial love that often binds them.
Yay, thank you guys. And I am so excited to hear Ashley speak at our event next week. That's going to be really awesome. Next, I have some nonfiction recommendations. The first is Into the Forest by Rebecca Frankel. This reveals a little-known chapter in Holocaust history about a family who survives the war by fleeing into a forest and spending 2 years there before being liberated. It's a gripping tale of love, escape, and survival, spanning wartime Poland to 1955 Connecticut. For readers of Heather Morris and Renia's Diary, this is a beautifully researched and gripping narrative that is both tragic and uplifting. Next, A Taste for Poison, 11 Deadly Molecules and the Killers Who Used Them by Neil Bradbury. Jaw-dropping, fascinating, and spellbinding. This is an irresistible debut that is a combination of science, medicine, and true crime. The perfect blends of educational and murderous. Dive into some of the most infamous poison cases in history with historic records and current news headlines. This is great for fans of American Sherlock and The Nocturnal Brain. Next is Brothers on Three, a true story of family resistance and hope on a reservation in Montana by Abe Street. This is a story of coming of age on a reservation in the American West and a team uniting a community. In 2017, the boys of the Flathead Indian Reservation brought home the Montana State Basketball Championship trophy, but their journey was only beginning. This book follows two of the starters along with their teammates, coaches, and families as they balance the pressures of adolescence, shoulder the dreams of their community, and chart their own individual courses for the future. Give this to fans of Friday Night Lights or Killers of the Flower Moon. Next book is Breathing Fire by Jamie Lowe. This tells the story of a group of female inmate firefighters working endless hours to fight the fires in California. But it's more than just a story about firefighting. It's a story of how these women came together and what the future holds for them, while also taking a look at the incarceration system, underlying catastrophes of climate change and economic disparity.
Okay, now we're moving on to some YA, which, as everyone knows, is my jam. So give me your recommendations, please.
Okay, first I have the highly anticipated conclusion to the Simon Snow trilogy. It is a perfect recommendation for Emily since I know she loves everything from Rainbow Rowell. The story that began with Carry On and continued with Wayward Son is coming to a close with Any Way the Wind Blows. Oh, that kind of rhymed too. I didn't even Simon, Baz, Penelope, and Agatha are back in England, back at Wofford, and back to their families for their longest and most emotional adventure yet. This book promises to answer all your questions, reveal all the secrets, and lay all the ghosts to rest.
I am recommending Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber to Emily because she's our YA specialist and she loves Stephanie Garber's Caraval series. This is the first book in a new fantasy series from Garber. It will remind you of Marissa Meyer's Supernova, Tomi Adeyemi's Children of Virtue and Vengeance, and Leigh Bardugo's King of Scars. Evangeline was raised in her father's curiosity shop, growing up on legends about immortals like the tragic Prince of Hearts. When Evangeline learns that the love of her life is about to marry another, she becomes desperate enough to offer the Prince of Hearts whatever he wants in exchange for his help to stop the wedding. The prince only asks for 3 kisses. But after Evangeline's first promised kiss, she learns that the Prince of Hearts wants far more from her.
And then my recommendation for Emily is Wild Tongues Can't Be Tamed. Zaricia Finnell is the founder of The Bronx is Reading, and this anthology of personal essays and poems features an all-star cast of Latinx contributors, including Elizabeth Acevedo, Meg Medina, Mark Oshiro, Christina Ariola, and many more. Through the stories told in this anthology, the writers interrogate the different myths and stereotypes about the rich and diverse Latinx community. From immigration, to sexuality, music to language, and more, these stories are sure to inspire hope and spark dialogue.
Thanks, guys. Those all sound amazing. Here are a few more upcoming YA titles. First up, we have Bright Ruined Things by Samantha Coho. Set over the course of one day, a girl realizes her life on a glittering magical island isn't what it seems in a 1920s set fantasy inspired by The Tempest. May has only ever lived on the island, surviving on the charity of the wealthy Prosper family who controls the island's magic and the spirits who inhabit it. When the spirits start inexplicably dying, May starts to realize that things aren't what they seem. In this YA fantasy ideal for fans of Adrienne Young, Samantha Coho wonderfully mixes magic and an atmospheric historical setting into a fantastically immersive world with characters you won't be able to forget. Next, please. The Dead in the Dark by Courtney Gould. Teenagers are disappearing in Snakebite, Oregon, and some of them are turning up dead. Two girls team up to stop the evil presence terrorizing their small town, and they just might fall in love in the process. Courtney Gould's thrilling debut is about the things that lurk in the corners, the parts of you that can't remain hidden, and about finding home in places and people you didn't expect. Hand this supernatural thriller to fans of Wilder Girls, The Hazelwood, and of course, Supernatural. Within These Wicked Walls by Lauren Blackwood. Emily A. Duncan meets Tomi Adeyemi in this Ethiopian-inspired fantasy retelling of Jane Eyre. Andromeda is a Debtera, an exorcist hired to cleanse households of the evil eye. When a handsome young heir named Magnus reaches out to hire her, she takes the job without question. If she wants to earn a living, she has no choice. She soon realizes that this is a job like no other, and Magnus is hiding far more than she has been trained for. Death is likely if she stays, but leaving Magnus to live out his curse on his own isn't an option because, despite everything, she has fallen for him. Stunningly romantic, Lauren Blackwood's heart-stopping debut is Jane Eyre meets Beauty and the Beast, dripping with gothic fantasy. Next, please. Better Together by Christine Riccio. Jamie and Siri are sisters living on opposite coasts. They've grown up living completely separate lives, Jamie with their dad and Siri with their mom. Now, reunited after over a decade apart, they hatch a plot to switch places. It's time they got to know and confront each of their estranged parents. But due to some unexpected magic, their switch takes a turn and they find themselves living in each other's bodies. Freaky Friday meets The Parent Trap in this sparkling and heartfelt story about sisters, second chances, finding romance, and finding yourself. Next, please. If This Gets Out by Sophie Gonzalez and Cale Dietrich. 18-year-olds Ruben Montez and Zach Knight are two members of the boy band Saturday, one of the biggest acts in America. On a whirlwind tour through Europe, Ruben and Zach come to rely on each other more and more, and their already close relationship evolves into a romance. But when they decide they're ready to tell their fans and live freely, they realize that they will never have the support of their management. How can they hold tight to each other when the whole world seems to want to come between them? This is great for fans of Red, White, and Royal Blue, What If It's Us, and boy bands. Next, please. Never Saw You Coming by Erin Hahn. Raised by conservative parents, 18-year-old Meg just found out that her entire childhood was a lie. Now she's traveling to meet what's left of the family she never knew existed. While there, she meets Micah, a former pastor's kid whose dad ended up in prison, leaving Micah with some mixed-up feelings about church. As the pair grow closer, they are confronted with the heavy flutterings of first love and all the complexities it brings. This is a very personal story for Erin, who has her own complicated history with faith. And if you're interested in learning more, she has written a letter to readers, which can be found on the Edelweiss page for this book. Next, please. Where It All Lands by Jenny Wexler. Constantly moving from city to city means that Stevie Rosenstein has never had a best friend or fallen in love. The pain of leaving always hurts too much to make any deep connections. When Stevie meets Drew and Shane, best friends, she expects the same routine as usual. But a simple coin toss alters the course of their year in ways they could never expect. Told in dual timelines, debut author Jenny Wexler delivers a heartbreaking and hopeful novel about missed opportunities, second chances, and how no matter the road, love can find its way. Next, please. You've Reached Sam by Dustin Tao. 17-year-old Julie has her future all planned out, but then her boyfriend Sam dies and everything changes. Heartbroken and desperate to hear his voice one more time, Julie calls Sam's phone to listen to his voicemail, and Sam picks up the phone. In a miraculous turn of events, Julie has a second chance at goodbye. The connection is temporary, but hearing Sam's voice makes her fall for him all over again, and with each call, it becomes harder to let him go. This is a heartfelt novel about love and loss and what it means to say goodbye. Next, please. Remember Me by Estelle Lohr. If you could erase all of your painful memories, would you? Blue Owens wakes up one day with the strangest feeling that something is very wrong. Everyone is acting weird, and she found a note in her closet with a mysterious message. Eventually, the truth is revealed. Blue has paid to have her memories removed. What transpires is Blue's journey to get her memories back, uncover the truth of why she had them removed, and ultimately decide whether they were too necessary to who she is to lose in the first place. Next, please. The Tragedy of Dane Riley by Kat Spears. After his dad's death, Dane's grasp on reality is slipping away. His mom is moving on, he hates her new boyfriend, and the girl next door is confusing, to say the least. This is an emotional novel about mental health, dealing with grief, and growing up. It's the story of a teenager looking to make sense of his feelings in the wake of tragedy and finding the strength he needs to make life worth living. Next. Enola Holmes and the Black Barouche by Nancy Springer. Enola Holmes is back. This time, she's taking on a missing person case. Letitia Glover received a note from her sister's husband, the Earl, that her twin sister had died, but Letitia is convinced otherwise, and she enlists Enola to uncover the truth. Enola goes undercover and soon finds out that this is not the first time one of the Earl's wives has died suddenly. To solve the mystery, Enola gets help from her brother Sherlock, as well as an old friend you may recognize from the Netflix movie, The Young Viscount Tewkesbury. Both fans of the original series and those new to the series will find much to enjoy. Next. I Am Margaret Moore by Hannah Capin. Every summer, Margaret, Rose, Flor, and Nisreen return to Marshall Naval School, where they go sailing and do drills and earn sunburns and honors. But this summer is different. Girls are missing and a boy is dead. Then, one by one, Margaret's friends vanish. Can she unravel the secrets of summer's past, or will she be pulled under by the place she once called home? Lyrical and haunting, I Am Margaret Moore is a paranormal thriller that tests the hold of sisterhood and truth. That's it for the titles. If you are interested in hearing more YA from us, you can register for an upcoming book buzz we have. I'll be joined by my colleagues from Disney, Sterling, and Workman for a YA-only book buzz on April 13th, and you can register at the link in the chat. That's it from us. Again, here are all of the ways you can get in touch with us if you have any questions or just, want to say hi. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. We love you. We miss you.
This was so fun. Thank you so much, Talia, Amanda, Emily, and Samantha, for taking the time to speak with all of us this afternoon. It was so great hearing from you and your matches in these amazing books. On Monday, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's slide presentation, title list, certificate of completion, and video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. Did you know that registration for ALA's virtual annual conference and exhibition is now open? Taking place between June 23rd and 29th, this year's conference will feature amazing speakers, educational programming, and an opportunity to connect with colleagues and librarians everywhere. Plus, if you register before April 16th, you'll save on registration rates. Visit 2021.annual.org for more details. And if you aren't yet a subscriber, pair the print reading experience with the convenience of online access at booklistonline.com and lock in print, online, digital, and archive access by taking advantage of this special offer to get Booklist for only $75. And thank you all for joining us for today's webinar. And one more thank you to our sponsor, Macmillan Library Marketing. This concludes today's webinar.